What's it like to be a fan of Kanye? Imagine this. You're in a university philosophy seminar. You've discussed the trolley problem in the Chinese room so far. Then, the professor shows the class a video of Kanye declaring himself Moses. She tells the class that Kanye suffers from bipolar disorder, has a history of narcissistic tendencies, usually makes bombastic statements in order to promote an album, and belongs to a genre where grandiosity is normalized. She asks the class to choose one side of Kanye and justify why he has declared himself Moses. This is the Kanye problem. This video is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. It's light, sleek, and industrial. It doesn't fold or awkwardly bulge in your back pocket, and it seriously changed my whole pocket situation. Most people are still using wallets designed in the 90s, carrying around old receipts, pictures of their ex, and gift cards in an unorganized mess. Not the Ridge Wallet, though. This wallet holds up to 12 cards, plus room for cash, and there's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. The durable material means each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You could buy this one wallet and carry it for life. If this wasn't enough to win you over yet, check out their 30,000 5-star reviews. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it that they'll let you test drive it for 45 days. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/Sisyphus. That's ridge.com/Sisyphus and use code Sisyphus. Link in description. Kanye West, whether you love him or hate him, has arguably become one of the most popular characters in the mainstream media cycle. Aside from his artistic accolades and grandiose personality, one characteristic of Mr. West may stand out above all else: this inability to understand who he is and what he stands for. The same man who called out Bush's lackluster response to Katrina as a disregard for African Americans also stated that slavery was a choice. The same man who rapped about Donald Trump's lack of hair and predatory business strategy then endorsed him and then ran for president under an independent party. The same guy that wrote this also went on to produce a Christian gospel album entirely devoid of cursing. What explains Kanye's erratic behavior? To a certain degree, hip-hop offers us a culture of grandiose and bombastic statements, where moral ambiguity and even more so blatant egocentrism are the default for lyrical content. And, regarding current psychological consensus, tracking the causality of any behavior to a specific variable is almost impossible. I certainly will not try to do so. We simply can't disentangle which parts of Kanye are authentic from the parts that are projections of his grandiose hip-hop personality, and likewise, which parts stem from certain mental health issues. However, I can't help but notice the insensitive treatment of Kanye's bipolar disorder. Hopefully the following will better explain psychological disorders, bipolar disorder, the effects of bipolar disorder on identity and creativity, and a potentially healthy path for those in Kanye's position. Firstly, here's a quick run-through of Kanye. Kanye was born June 8, 1977 to Ray West, a former Black Panther, and Donda West, an English professor and chair of the English department at Chicago State University. Donda especially inspired Kanye's creative path as he took up drawing and writing from a young age. Starting in the 2000s, Kanye released 3 socially conscious, soulful hip-hop albums that rocketed him to success. However, in 2007, Kanye's life took a dark turn when his mother died from complications in a cosmetic surgery. Months later, Kanye's fiancée, who he had started dating in 2002, ended their engagement. In a Q magazine interview, Kanye would place the blame on his mother's death largely on himself. He states, "If I had never moved to LA, she'd be alive. I don't want to go far into it because it will bring me to tears." Kanye's music grew darker and far more self-indulgent afterwards, and after several controversies, including a paranoid rant during a concert tour, Kanye was hospitalized where he exhibited signs of mania and severe depression. In a Letterman interview, Kanye stated that he had bipolar disorder. Recently, Kanye has embraced religion to an extreme degree, announcing himself as a Christian artist and touring with a gospel group. He has also tweeted erratically, confessing personal details about his marriage and launching a presidential campaign despite missing several important deadlines. The signs of bipolar are frequently evident, especially when off script. Here is an excerpt of Kanye speaking on SNL shortly before his hospitalization. This was followed by SNL cast member Pete Davidson saying, "Being mentally ill is not an excuse to act like a jackass." Is it an excuse? This can only be answered through a better understanding of bipolar disorder. Formerly known as manic depressive disorder, bipolar is essentially the consistent cycling of extreme mood swings between high periods of mania and low periods of depression. The manic phase is present when one is irritable, angry, and may engage in promiscuous acts, egotistical behavior, and overspending due to a surge of euphoria and overconfidence. Here is an account from someone with bipolar regarding the manic phase. "During my mania, I feel like a god. I feel like I can do anything, so my self-worth skyrockets. I can't explain it, but when the mania burns out, I've got nothing left. Without the highs of mania, I wouldn't be able to tolerate the lows of depression." And yes, the depressive phase is very low, including anxiety, hopelessness, pessimism, thoughts of death, and chronic pain. Here's that same individual's personal account of the depressive phase. "When I'm depressed, I want to be left alone. It's not that I want to be by myself, I want everyone to disappear. I don't want to go anywhere, see anyone, or do anything. It's like no matter what I do, people are telling me I'm doing something wrong. So the easiest way to feel better is to hide." Researchers estimate that between 25% and 60% of individuals with bipolar disorder will attempt suicide at least once in their lives, and between 4 and 19% will complete it. This is a rate 10 to 30 times higher than in the general population. This disorder can be caused by specific genes, advanced paternal age at conception, and childhood trauma. It can be treated with mood-stabilizing drugs such as lithium and antidepressant medication, nutritional approaches, and psychotherapeutic treatment. Of course, this is a very clinical analysis of bipolar. It seems to be fairly negative to deal with. We kind of know what causes it, we kind of know it can alleviate it. So why wouldn't those with bipolar just get the help they need? Why doesn't Kanye just get help and, in the words of Pete Davidson, stop being a jackass? To answer this, we need to understand what having a mental disorder even means. Mental disorders are present when one has thoughts, reasoning, feelings, emotions, or behaviors that deviate from normal thought and can be considered socially or personally dysfunctional. Those with mental disorders, when possible, are usually encouraged to seek treatment in order to cure or alleviate their ailment. What exactly does disorder mean? Any sort of diagnosis that uses normalcy as a referent could indicate not only organic disorder, but on a more subjective level, ethical disorder. After all, what society judges to be normal isn't always, in retrospect, good. Homosexuality, for example, was cited as being a deviation from normal societal function and was considered to be a psychological disorder by the APA until 1973. Some definitions have attempted to give disorder an objective status. Wakefield, for example, suggests that a mental disorder is harmful when judged by the standards of a person's culture and results from the inability of some internal mechanism to perform its natural function. This, however, relies on moral relativism and some assumptions behind the meaning of natural function. Anti-psychiatry, promoted by thinkers such as R.D. Laing and Michel Foucault, offers an analytical critique of this very issue. What is normal, and who's to say what normal means? These opponents of psychiatric diagnosis argue that labeling someone with a disorder as objectifying leads to social stigma and, in the words of Foucault, takes a more diffused and subtle form that imperceptibly disciplines and controls not only bodies, but selves. Some philosophers stray from societal definitions and provide a definition of disorder surrounding the idea of eudaimonia, or living one's best life. For example, some offer the notion of disorder as that of disunity. Aristotle, Spinoza, and the Stoics all agree on some sort of notion of the unified soul as a healthy one, meaning one that is rational and virtuous. A disunified soul is irrational, vicious, and could even lead to madness when unchecked. This disunity argument certainly reflects disorders such as bipolar, where the individual appears frayed between absolute euphoria and a numbing depression. However, most would argue that feelings of disunity would encourage those afflicted with the disorder to seek treatment. It would make sense then for those with bipolar to feel the need to seek help. Nonetheless, those who suffer from bipolar have demonstrated a reluctance to treat the disorder. One study in which sufferers of various mental disorders are asked to press a button if they wanted to live without their disorder demonstrates that bipolar patients generally do not press the button. Bipolar patients also rarely seek help in a state of mania, but will do so during a depressive phase. It appears that the disunity in bipolar disorder is tolerated, specifically for the benefits of the manic phase. This is explained when we replace our disunity definition of disorder with deprivation. The philosopher Augustine argued that evil is the deprivation of good. Evil, then, is falling short of realizing one's potential rather than something one has. When applied to disorders, a mental illness is a depriving relationship rather than depriving entity. It is the lack of something rather than the addition of something. One is suffering from ontological deprivation when suffering from a disorder, with ontological meaning the very essence of existence and being, the state of the self. Through applying Augustinian ontology to contemporary psychiatric definitions of bipolar disorder, we may now begin to unravel exactly why Kanye acts like a jackass. Bipolar disorder appears separate from the other mental disorders under the Augustinian framework, in that it appears to add something beneficial or self-actualizing, rather than depriving the individual of their ability to reach their full potential. This, of course, is something that's far from the truth, and likely a cause of the delusion of the manic phase. The self under bipolar disorder is far from simplistic. In fact, there are multiple selves: the depressed self, the manic self, the in-between self, and the normal self. This in itself challenges the very notion of the self, and if a normal or real one really exists. The postmodernist and constructionist perspective argue that there is no real self, but rather constructed selves. We constantly weave an ever-changing story that revolves around an inconsistent and sporadic set of conscious matter that we call ourself. This is expressed best in Daniel Dennett's definition of the self as the center of narrative gravity. The thing with bipolar is that despite the lows of depression, there is at least a version of the constructed self in between the mood swings that weaves a pretty awesome story, one where you're the hero, genius, or even Moses. If most of us could choose which self we would like to be, especially when confronted by states of serious depression, we wouldn't mind such a feeling of overconfidence and brilliance. More so, manic phases have been known to give serious spiritual and creative insights. A plethora of notable figures such as Newton, Mozart, Edgar Allan Poe, and Van Gogh demonstrate serious signs of bipolar in their personal lives, denoting the possibility that much of their creativity and genius existed specifically in their manic phases full of insight. Kanye himself has even declared bipolar to be his superpower, a source of creative rocket fuel for his numerous artistic endeavors. Their personal success, after a while, might be so intertwined with the manic phase that the bipolar patient soon treats their manic self as the real self. As Julia A. Fast, a writer with bipolar disorder, explains, and not just do they fear loss of their creative juices, but also their entire sense of identity. Bipolar disorder is genetic in its foundations, so it is vital to understand that individuals with bipolar, to one extent or another, have regarded themselves and the world around them in extreme ways for much of their lives. Stability through bipolar treatment is often feared to be so neutral a position that they would actually feel nothing, not energized and alive, or for that matter, sad and wanting. This manic self is quite the manipulator. One of the largest hurdles in bipolar therapy is convincing the patient that they can be just as creative and produce even greater results without their manic phase. It is, after all, important to highlight that creativity is not mere boundless imagination, but also involves a certain capacity to produce works that are socially appropriate or useful. Creative does not imply randomness. Bipolar therapy should revolve around this fear of losing one's creative process. As suggested by one bipolar therapist, first of all, it's important to note how people often confuse the intense rise of manic energy with a sudden surge of creative skill, but this really isn't how creativity works. Indeed, someone flush with energy may feel creative, with boundless excitement to get things done, but this can also lead to a disorganized and reckless path, which the person in mania will brazenly justify through denial. It's necessary to assess one's own talents that may be seen as raw or innate. Essentially, they are possible desires or pursuits that have some genuine attachment to that person's life and experience. Just because mania might make you believe that you can write the great American novel, that doesn't mean you can. Mania often deludes the person into believing they are greater than their skill can produce. Can we create when manic? Yes, but only until an episode goes too far. The people around us hate the mania and are scared by the psychosis. It's essential that we teach anyone with this diagnosis that they can create when stable. It's not as fun as the mania, but it is the only way to have longevity in a career. And that is perhaps the most important point. Right now, on a very public stage, we are witnessing someone who is having a period of severe instability. The last thing this individual needs is a media frenzy to further stoke the fire, and in doing so encourage this individual to put off seeking help. What appears funny now might become less so when that person potentially becomes yet another statistic. Nietzsche, another genius who many suggest to have suffered from bipolar disorder, similarly experienced a ramping up of his mania in his final years. Nietzsche assuredly gained many insights from his experiences beyond the realm of consciousness. Nonetheless, he even noted the necessity in controlling one's madness in order to properly process such insights. Unfortunately, his advice never quite found appreciation in his own life. This paper, the final in a series that traces the extent to which Nietzsche's work could have been inspired by his bipolar, leaves us with a sobering conclusion. Nietzsche often evoked an image of a star, no doubt identifying himself with this celestial body. I've observed that he usually wrote no more than 2 books per year, often just one. In his last productive year of 1888, however, he emitted at least 5 books, shorter but of high energy. In physics, such high emissions of energy is held to occur when the nucleus of the atom is unstable and the center cannot hold. Cosmologists maintain that the dying stars shine the brightest, and perhaps Nietzsche was no exception.